It all starts at one of the most famous places in America, West Point.
And it's about one of its most legendary and, let's be real, controversial graduates.
The whole thing centers on this enormous painting of him not as a U.S. hero, but as a Confederate general. After years and years of debate, Congress finally stepped in and the painting was taken down. But now, guess what? The Trump administration has ordered it to be put right back up. So what is going on here? Okay, let's get right into it. We are talking about a giant 20-foot-tall portrait of Robert E. Lee that the Trump administration wants to put back in a place of honor at West Point. But this whole thing is about way more than just a painting. It's about who we as a country choose to put on a pedestal. So if you're ready to get into the weeds on this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Let's do this. So what is this painting that's causing such a stir? Well, the order came straight from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and it was simple. Put that huge portrait of Confederate General Robert E. Lee back where it was, in the West Point Library. But look, this isn't just any old portrait. We're talking about a 20-foot-tall monument hung back in 1952, deep in the Jim Crow era. It shows Lee in his Confederate gray, but here's the detail that's just shocking and impossible to ignore. There's an enslaved person right there at his side, holding his horse. And, to really understand why this painting is so divisive, you have to grapple with the man himself. Robert E. Lee is, to put it mildly, a walking contradiction.
So, on one side of the coin, you have Lee, the West Point golden boy. Graduated at the top of his class, even served as the academy's superintendent, and gave 30 years of service to the United States Army. But on the other side, you have Lee, the Confederate general, the man who resigned from that very same army, committed what is defined as treason, and led a war to preserve the institution of slavery. And this is where the whole story gets even more complicated. Because in 1856, Lee actually wrote that slavery was a moral and political evil. Seems pretty cut and dried, right? Well, not so fast. Because his actions and his other words tell a completely different story. The man personally owned enslaved families. He managed hundreds more for his wife's family, and there are records of him ordering them to be whipped. And then there's this jaw-dropper. He wrote that he thought slavery was actually a greater evil to the white man because of the painful discipline they had to inflict on the enslaved, which he called necessary for their instruction as a race. So you have to ask, how in the world did a painting honoring a man who committed treason against the United States end up at America's most elite military academy? Well, to figure that out, we got to look at when it went up and, more importantly, why. So the painting first goes up in 1952, right in the middle of the Jim Crow era. It hung there for decades, until 2020, when Congress basically said, okay, we need to deal with this, and formed a commission to remove Confederate symbols from military property. That led to the painting's official removal in 2022. And that brings us to today, with the new administration ordering it to be put right back. Okay, so here's the key bit of history you need to understand the painting's origin. After the Civil War, there was this brief period called Reconstruction, which was a real attempt to transform the South and create equity. But that got replaced by something called reconciliation, which was basically an effort to bring the country together by, downplaying the whole treason thing and just kind of papering over the horrors of slavery. That Lee painting is a perfect product of that reconciliation mindset. In fact, you want to know what they said at the painting's unveiling in 1952? General Maxwell Taylor got up and said that the issues that divided the country back in 1861 have no real meaning anymore. And get this, he said that just 1 month after the Army had decided to desegregate and years before the Civil Rights Movement really took off. It was a conscious effort to rewrite history in real time. But listen, you have to understand, this is not just about one painting hanging in one library. Not at all. It's part of a much bigger and very deliberate pattern of actions. You can see the playbook. Step 1, bring back the Lee portrait. Step 2, return the so-called Reconciliation Monument to Arlington National Cemetery. That's a statue that literally depicts a sanitized, mammy caricature of an enslaved woman. And the final step, bring back the Confederate names from major Army bases. This is a clear, coordinated effort. So what's the official reason for doing all this? Well, according to the Army's communications director, the line is, under this administration, we honor our history and learn from it. We don't erase it.
So that brings us to the real heart of the issue, right? Is this actually about honoring history, or is it about rewriting it? Let's break down what's really at stake. At the end of the day, this whole fight isn't really about a piece of canvas. It is a battle for our national memory. It's a fight to decide which version of America's story gets the place of honor in our most important institutions.
And that leaves all of us with a pretty heavy question. When we're faced with the most difficult, painful parts of our past, what's our responsibility? Should we be restoring these old symbols, or should we be reckoning with the history they represent? So what's your take? Drop a comment below and let us know what you think. Should these symbols be restored, or is it time to reckon with them in a different way? And hey, if this gave you something to chew on, do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button for more. Thanks for watching.